Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. Today I wanted to talk about damage creep, which is another one of the buzzwords that has been going around the League of Legends community for a while now, and people basically saying, well, it feels like damage is way too high across the board, way higher than it's been in past seasons, and in general, I just want to get significantly reduced damage, just cut damage by 10% across the board, which is a problematic in and of itself, but I won't deny that damage creep is the most popular thing being talked about. So today I wanted to kind of break down damage creep and sort of say, does it really exist in League of Legends? Now, have come out and confirmed that damage for the most part is roughly on par with where it has been in the past. So damage creep numerically is not higher. Zed is still dealing the same amount of damage he was dealing in previous seasons, so on and so forth with most of the roster. Obviously there are some outliers, some champions are doing more damage, some champions are doing less, but generally speaking it's the same amount of damage across the board. However, what I will say is that damage is significantly more visible now than it has been in the past. So beforehand, Zed goes in, he hits you with both his Qs, he hits you with the E, his ult is on you. Yeah, okay, you expect to die because he landed all of his damage and he had the raw stats to do so. Now, nowadays, though, he has a Duskblade proc, which is a very visible, very noisy effect. He has Electrocute proc, again, a very visible, very noisy effect. Other runes he has might be triggering at the same time, so especially something like Sudden Impact, he gets the benefit from. If he has other runes or other abilities, those are all triggering at the same time. So even though the damage he's dealing is no higher than it was before, a lot more of it is significantly more visible. You see the Duskblade, you see the Electrocute, and you realize, wow, that was a whole bunch of damage, when in reality, it's really not that much higher than it has been before. The other thing I will say, though, is that poke damage is significantly higher than it was before. Now, if you get clipped by one Lux E, for example, in previous seasons, you just kind of took the damage. But nowadays, if you get hit by just the very tip of it, you take damage from the Lux E, you take damage from Airy, you take damage from Scorch, and it just generally feels like there's a lot more damage coming through. Another thing that could be contributing to the perception of power creep, or damage creep, I should say, is that there was a health bar update, which is a very small thing, and I'm not saying this had an impact on it, but I think it had an impact on the perception. Because remember, HP bars literally shake now when you take burst damage. You see this big chunkier health bar turn red and then disappear. The health bar shakes around. So even though the damage was the same as it has been in previous seasons, it looks more visceral and it looks like, wow, I really just got annihilated. When in previous seasons, you just would have taken the damage and said, oh wow, that was a big chunk. So that, I think, is part of the perception. Obviously, I think that there is a slight amount of higher damage than it was before, but part of the viscerality is what leads to people thinking it's a huge problem when it really isn't that much of a problem. Another big issue with the perception of damage creep is that damage feels higher just because of lack of frontliners in games. So, and I don't mean the Garen building lethality is not a frontliner, the Vi building lethality, not a frontliner. I'm talking about people who are building straight tank. So if that Garen is building Dead Man's Plate, Spirit Visage, that's a frontliner. If you have frontliners like Malphite or Maokai, more traditional tanks, those count. And for the most part, these champions aren't being played, which has a couple of impacts on the game. So, first of all, teams without tanks tend to take more damage in general because they don't have a big, beefy frontliner who can afford to walk at the enemy team and be a zoning threat. So they generally end up taking more damage because they have no one to zone off the enemy backline, for example. If I'm a tank, I can kind of walk at the enemy team or the enemy backline in particular, and they have to be careful about engaging on the team because they realize that tank is threatening to just go in and kill me, and I can't afford to deal with that, so I have to play more safe. If you don't have a tank, though, they just walk up and start hitting you, so you generally take more damage. You also don't have a tank soaking a lot of their cooldowns. If the tank walks up and they dump all their cooldowns onto the tank, well, of course it's going to feel a little bit better for you because they blew their cooldown, so you're going to take less damage. So with not having a tank, teams generally not playing tanks, especially recently, will take more damage. No tanks on the team also mean that both teams generally end up having 4 to 5 damage dealing champions, which, yes, means that there is more damage in the game because unlike a team that is running, let's say, a Rammus in the jungle and a Maokai in the top lane, well, they only have damage from 2, maybe 3 sources if they're running someone like a Brand as their support, where conversely, a team that is running, let's say, a Darius in the top lane and an Evelynn in the jungle, well, everyone on your team is going to be dealing damage. So of course there's more damage to go around. So of course it'll feel like you get bursted harder than you did before. It's not because damage is higher, it's just that they opted into a team composition that is entirely made up of damage. So these are all kind of factors that lead to the perception that damage creep is higher, but it hasn't actually gone up by a significant margin. I would say even like statistically significant margin of damage creep does not exist. However, I'm not going to say there isn't a problem with the current system. I think there is, and that's in that damage hasn't gone up, but it has shifted into more unavoidable forms. So for example, like I said before about ZQ or the Lux E. Previously, you just straight up took the Lux E and it sucked, and you took damage for it, but at least you only took the Lux E. However, nowadays, instead of just taking a bunch of AP damage from Lux, you also take the Scorch, you also take the Airy, as I was saying. There's a lot less you can do about it. It feels really bad because all of a sudden, wow, that was a whole bunch of damage that I literally couldn't do anything about, just getting hit by one Lux E, and I take all of my health bar. That is what feels pretty bad, and that's what I'll say is possibly a problem. The new rune system, unfortunately, doesn't have a lot of the counterplay that other runes do. So if I'm able to avoid taking damage, well, the runes trigger anyways if I just barely get clipped by an ability. Whereas beforehand, a lot more of their damage was tied up in landing said abilities. So in general, those are my kind of thoughts. I don't know how you would fix the problem if you're Riot. The only thing I would assume is that you would have to find some way to make it so that rune damage is more easily avoidable. Airy, I think, is a big problem right now because it is just, if you take damage from the guy, the Airy procs. And if they're able to walk back and get the Airy, the damage procs. So that feels bad in particular. But Comet, for example, does have the ability to dodge. There are some other things that Riot, I think, could do to make runes more like Comet and less like Airy, to try and give them some more just ability to play around the rune, as opposed to, if it's up, I just take more damage. But in general, I disagree with the notion that damage creep really exists as a thing. Damage is really not that much higher than it's been in previous seasons for the above factors I've listed. However, let me know what your guys' thoughts are down in the comment section below. Would love to hear from you, especially if you disagree. Let me know why you guys think damage creep is still a thing in the game. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and leave a like. And if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. And if you're looking for more Grab the Lantern content, you can check out my blog, link down in the description. I upload an article just about each and every single day for your enjoyment. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it. And I'll talk to you all later.